Good evening. I'm Pittsburgh City Councilman Robert Daniel Lavelle,
And I'm Councilman Reverend Ricky Burgess.
and we welcome you back to another episode of Black Pittsburgh Matters. Black Pittsburgh Matters is a series of virtual town hall meetings affirming a citywide agenda that Black Pittsburgh does indeed matter. Black Pittsburgh Matters means that Black lives matter. We must protect the health and safety of Black people. It means that Black communities matter. It means we must focus on rebuilding those Black communities. And it means that Black wealth matters. We must focus on increasing Black employment and entrepreneurship.
The Black community has been disproportionately affected by concurrent crises, the COVID-19 pandemic and its economic crisis, and the current problem with race relations, which is a public health crisis. Normally, in times of crisis and great change, we'd be coming to you as the Black elected officials of Pittsburgh, having meetings across the city with our constituents, partners, and allies. Since we cannot do so safely in this current pandemic, we're now using this media and platform to come to you in the ways in which we can, to talk about what we're doing, discuss policy and legislation concerning Black Pittsburgh. These meetings will be available via Facebook, YouTube, and the city's cable channel. You can contact or ask questions via the Black Pittsburgh Matters Facebook page, or you can email us at blackpghmatters@gmail.com. And you can do so even right now. Today's town hall meeting topic is Black Pittsburgh Matters with the Black elected officials update.
On the second week of every month, we are joined by our partners and members of the Pittsburgh Black Elected Officials Coalition. And we are here to speak comprehensively about the programs, initiatives, and plans for Black Pittsburghers at both the state, county, and city level.
Today, on this meeting of the new year, we want to talk about our accomplishments in 2020, our plans for 2021. We're glad to have with us, our state officials are away. We have County Councilman Olivia Bennett, and trying to get on the call is County Councilman DeWitt Waltham. Welcome to today's town hall meeting. I want to start off though, talking a little bit about the current condition of our country. On last week, on Wednesday, we had rioters storming the nation's capital, being, stoked and encouraged by Donald Trump. And now today, Donald Trump, because of those actions, has been impeached. There's an article that I read by Guy Lancaster that talks about linking the riot on the Capitol. And he argues that what it really was is a modern day lynch mob, right? He said there are three things that incident had in common with the lynch mobs that were lynching Black people in the South in the 18th and 1900s. He said that the first thing was that they were open about it. It happened in broad daylight. It wasn't secretive, it wasn't covert. Many of them were taking selfies and Facebooking and texting. The second thing is they took souvenirs. Back in the day when they lynched Black people, they often would burn their bodies and take their clothes or bits of bone from their remains, and they'd have picnic baskets and make a go of it. And then the third thing is that it was complicit with law officials, that the law department and the legal officials were complicit. And in this case, the police officers, they did not really protect the Capitol. They had just a skeleton crew of officers. And then in addition to that, the officers, they did have, some of them were helping guiding the protesters. And because of that, now we have the impeachment of Donald Trump. So my argument is, even though this is a traumatic time, this is not unusual to the history of our country. This is not a one-off. This is an example of what Pittsburgh is.
So after you mentioned that article at the end of our council meeting today, Rev, and so I did go and actually read it. And when we saw what unfolded last Wednesday, in the back of my mind, I said they had to be the the police had to be in on this, right? There's no way this can happen and they not participate. But at the same time, I hadn't necessarily thought about it in the manner in which the article speaks about it in terms of its complicity and the fact that historically the police have been in on it, right? So when it comes to our communities and to the lynching of our communities, both then and now, they're in on it. And in many respects, government is also complicit for our failure to prosecute, for our failure to hold them accountable. But even as the news has continued to unfold, I have admittedly been a little shocked at the amount of elected officials who were in that crowd from various parts of the country, from the amount of police that took off from their jobs to be a part of that crowd. And that just speaks to a whole nother level of complicity, but it also speaks to what everyone was protesting about all summer long, which is we know we will be treated differently. We know that we can do this and get away with it, and others simply cannot. And I think that's, although we know it, is also still just so alarming to actually see it unfold and seeing the manner in which it played itself out.
Yeah, I think for me, I just think about how loudly we screamed from the rooftops in 2015, 16 when Trump was elected, and how, I know me as an activist and other activists were just really like, you don't know what this is going to do. Like, this is not just the reality show guy now becoming president. Like, he has really harmful ideas and ideals that he will enact and will act out, and it will act out in our society. So for me, like, last Wednesday was not a surprise. This is kind of what I was yelling about 5 years ago when we were in election time. And as a protester, I recognize the difference in the response. And again, that is not a surprise. We saw that over and over again as people came out to protest mask wearing with being armed, and they were not met with the level of hostility as Black Lives Matter protesters have been, who are unarmed. So that, again, not a surprise. And yes, going back to history, I did not read the article that you all are referring. Just now heard of it. So, but yeah, going back through history, if you look at it, I mean, there is always this law enforcement participation. I mean, if you look at how law enforcement police were enacted in the first place, it was to capture runaway slaves. So why do we think that we're going to get something favorable or something that is really going to, represent all people when it was never created that way in the first place? So that really kind of lends itself to the argument, like you're saying, Daniel, about defunding and really about and questioning how police, even the culture of police in our communities, because if these people are complicit and participating in things like this, then that really speaks to what they believe and what their ideals are. And do we want people with those ideals patrolling communities with, name it, Black people, immigrants, LGBTQ, IA folks, like, name it. And, that's not what we need in our community. So it really does highlight, and I'm hoping, folks take advantage of this moment to really talk about why it is that we feel the police are not representative of us in our communities, and why we're even, I know projects now going on to make sure that Black communities are protected in these next coming days. And why are we doing that? Because we know that police will not do it. We see how police are treating us. We see what happened in East Liberty when we were protesting, rubber bullets, mace, tear gas, everything else. So again, it's not a surprise, but again, hopefully more people are noticing it, and now that it's hitting mainstream media and really being talked about how polar opposite the reactions are, maybe folks will start seeing it for themselves.
DeWitt, we're talking about the incident. Thank you. DeWitt, we're talking about the incident that occurred last Wednesday at the Capitol and sort of what we we think that says about our country?
As probably the senior member of this group in age, as opposed to terms of service, it brings back my memory and my experience on a personal level. Something that really occurred 52 years ago during the height of the civil rights movement, and how, as a freshman in college, I spent my second semester as a college freshman following and chasing George Wallace, the Republican governor from Alabama, around the country, and the full-scale frontal assaults that people endured by standing up for their rights and for our communities. And clearly, a thorough and complete investigation needs to occur, and none of this could have happened without complicity and people being on the inside engaged in supporting and allowing that insurrection to occur. I don't know whether or not a complete investigation, a complete transparent investigation will ever occur, much like the Kerner Commission report. And so I'm going back and talking about history. But what I do see taking place today that has never taken place in my lifetime is an open discussion by people who are not progressives, people who are not liberals, and people who are not Black, saying, what would have happened if those rioters, those insurrectionists, were Black? For the first time in the history of this country, that kind of conversation is being held. So while I clearly understand the frustration, the lack of trust, and the challenges that we have in front of us, gives rise to hope that we are going to turn that corner. Clearly, we have a lot of soul searching that has to go on by the larger society, and gives us the opportunity to organize and to continue to battle for justice in everything that we do as legislators, as residents of our community, and to not allow the status quo to continue. That we have an opportunity to mobilize, to educate, and to continue to transition. Some good things are happening right now. Is not fast enough nor deep enough, but we can't give in, we can't give up, and we can't give out.
So maybe, DeWitt, that's a good way to transition us then. Obviously, we just wrapped up 2020 2 weeks ago, but you're speaking about the hope that you have as we sort of move into 2021. What are you looking forward to, either as a legislator, either as someone involved in the workforce development space? What are you looking forward to working on as we move into 2021?
Liv and I were on a call on Monday with Senator Bob Casey. And I had the opportunity to close out the comments from county council members. And I talked about three things. I talked about the need for investment in infrastructure, in rebuilding our roads, bridges, our energy distribution system, and the need to make sure that those goods that were purchased, that will be purchased and utilized, are made in America by Americans, which gives an opportunity to put people that look like us on this event to work. We have to continue to fight and push at every turn to make sure that there is investment in that infrastructure. We have to also make sure that resources are provided for those people who have been displaced as a result of COVID, which has totally decimated our economy. Additionally, we have to put resources into projects to save those folk who have been displaced, and because of the transition that emerges from this displacement, will never go back to their old jobs. We also have to ensure that there's adequate compensation for those essential workers so that they can survive, their families can be safe, and maintain a quality standard of living. And that there's funding for workforce development programs and projects. And the last thing that I told him, that we have to invest in funding to support small businesses. One of the things from the reports that I've been reading and working on my workforce development effort is that white small businesses during 2020, the beginning of the pandemic, have failed at a rate approximately 20%. African American small businesses have failed at a rate of 40%. Money has to be designated and specifically assigned to African American small businesses so they can survive and grow into our emerging economy. We have to, in every sense of the word, put our money where our mouth is. The time for BS is far gone. We have to put resources in the organizations like Partners for Work, who we are working with on a task force to support Black businesses, to put in place solid workforce development programs, that we do put additional resources in education, because Black children are suffering this pandemic at far greater disparity than our greater society. Our kids have lost a year of education, which is absolutely critical for children in general, but triply critical for African American children. We have to reduce and eliminate those disparities that are founded upon race and gender and orientation. There's tons of stuff to do. Tons of stuff to do. We have to be diligent, we have to be focused, and we have to be committed to transformation.
Since you brought it up, I'm curious, did he leave you with any hope that they will indeed be working to provide the necessary funding to work on said issues?
I'm confident. I've been talking to elected leadership beyond our group all week. You know, I'm on a personal note, I'm experiencing some serious family tragedies. But Pittsburgh has become my family, and this crew, the PBOC, has really, in a large part, become my ancillary, my secondary family. And the cause that I believe in, the cause that I work for every day, folks really understand. Folks aren't willing, those folks that I've been talking to understand the need to put additional resources and skin in the game to make it happen. And we just have to collectively not yield and push for processes and efforts to sustain our communities. For you and Councilman Burgess, this is an excellent opportunity to be supported by us to promote the avenues of hope, that whole economic transformation, to build Black enclaves, to build Black economic centers, because nobody hires us at greater rates than us. We just have to make sure that the resources are there so those entrepreneurs, those folks who want to grow and reinvest into their communities, have an adequate opportunity and support to do so. I laud you for the work that you guys are doing, and let's keep pushing on it.
I'll take a little bait before going to Liv, but the avenues of hope, I think, is even more critical given COVID-19, in that we've lost so many inherent African-American businesses. This renewal of the Black business district consciously and deliberately gives us an opportunity to provide entrepreneurs, some who went out of business, affordable space that they can come back into business and provide a lifeline to our communities. You know, in order for people to thrive, they need places to shop. They need places they feel comfortable with. They don't just need housing. They need places where they can congregate. And so Avenues of Hope gives a possibility of providing not just housing and not just businesses, but in actuality, a place of gathering, of connecting, and of thriving. I'll leave that alone, and maybe we'll talk about that more later. Liv, what do you think about 2021? What are you working on? What do you hope to accomplish during this new year?
Well, like my fellow co-counselor, I really do want to work on equity. And I think going back to Daniel's question on if the senator was really sincere about doing the things that we brought up, I think he was. A lot of the things that, I know that I was going to bring up initially, he had already brought up in his introductory comments. So the fact that he even invited us to a table to have a conversation says something, because we didn't get that call from all senators, not dropping any names. So I do have some faith there. But in 2021, the first hurdle I'm hoping to get over with Councilman Walton as we work together through this is the Independent Police Review Board. I think that, that's going to do a lot to bring about equity. We just had a whole incident in McKeesport around the police shooting, where, there were countless departments out there searching and going in houses without warrants and all types of things that would have, had there been, or if we already had a civilian police review board, we would be able to push that over to them and say, hey, look at this and see if this was above board. And if not, what recommendations are we going to push back to the department or departments? So I just see a lot of call and a lot of need, and it's being reinforced every day about really creating something to help protect the almost million people that live outside of the city of Pittsburgh, where there is not an independent police review board. So that is priority number one for me. And then, like Councilman Walton said, just doing a lot of work around equity. the new diversity officer. I'm not sure what her actual title is. I'm just calling her that, so don't quote me on that title. But I was recently hired, so hopefully, we can start doing a lot of that equity work and really digging into what policy needs to happen. Of course, we have the Black Equity Coalition. There's a policy table going to be erected there as well that we can try to, kind of chop up what we need to do and what legislation needs to happen to move forward the agenda for Black folks specifically. So I'm not quoting anything because I'm waiting to hear, and do the work. I don't want to say this is where we're going because I like, I'm a people person. I like co-governing. So I like to hear from the people and then move from there. But some things we have coming down the pike, other than the Independent Police Review Board, is paid sick leave. We're trying to get paid sick leave through the county. Also, banning facial recognition, because we know that when we start using technology, a lot of times technology is adverse. It works adversely towards minority populations. So we're trying to nip that in the bud before it even comes a thing. And I believe we still have no-knock warrants, which I heard is also something that's going to be a priority in the city. So maybe we're going to be doing that in tandem. Not sure yet. So those are some things that that are coming down the pike and that I feel like are important missions, especially things, again, like the Independent Police Review Board and paid sick leave. Those things would definitely impact the county majorly. And I think that, folks would be appreciative if we can get those things done.
Well, one, I think is worth noting, because since Liv brought it up, that we are also on the co-governing model, Liv. We have heard the will of the people, most recently around police reform, and we have heard around the request for us to ban no-knock warrants within the city. And so I think it's fair to say that we are actively working on putting together that piece of legislation now. I believe what we're going to be able to do, hopefully, is actually take the legislation that was written and drafted by the community and introduce that specific bill. So hopefully we'll be able to do that in the very near future, and to the extent that we can tackle that both at a city and county level, I think that'd be tremendous. Something I'm specifically working on, because it took about 4 hours of my day today, is the redevelopment of the Lower Hill District. We're finally in a place where I believe we have two things happening. We have the Penns moving forward with the physical development, and F&B, First National Bank, is ready to build their office tower on the Lower Hill, which obviously, given the pandemic, given city being $60 million foreign revenue, giving all of these things, we need to begin putting people back to work. We need to spur our economy. And so this development will help do that. But more importantly, as it relates to this development, I think we're also finally in a place where this development will not only get built, but will be to the explicit benefit of the community, and even more specifically of Black residents. The Penguins and their development partners recently have taken what I would consider tremendous steps forward, and they've begun to hire a local Black residents, mostly from the Hill District community, and brought them on as part of their actual team. So as an example, young woman named Lakeisha Bird, who's an architect, lives in the Hill. They're bringing her on to be part of their team. Bomani House is being hired by BPG to be the vice president of BPG here locally. Irv Williams, who many of us know, is being brought on to be a part of the team. And there are others as well, an engineering firm and some others that are going to be a part of this team. And so now, not only do we have sort of the large developer, but we have people who understand the needs and the goals of and the objectives of the community all coming together, whereby we shouldn't have to necessarily fight each other, but rather be in a very strong position to deliver a deal. Now, as I say this, I'm looking at DeWitt, because I'm gonna need DeWitt to have about 100 bodies ready in the next 4 to 5 to 6 months to actually start constructing and building these things, to take part in this actual development. And so I think this is good. And before we officially started, Liv, we were sort of talking about our goals and the objectives. Since I took office, there has not been a month of my life where the Lower Hill has not been a part of my work in some form or fashion. And so seeing it finally get to this point is satisfying, but also knowing that we still got a lot of arguing and fussing and fighting to do to make sure we truly deliver something that's beneficial for the residents and begins to transform the lives of Black folk in this region. Because the reality is, I say the Hill, but we couldn't begin to fulfill all the jobs. We couldn't begin to get all the minority businesses to be a part of this site and just get them from the Hill District. They're going to have to come from your district, Liv. They're going to have to come from Rev's district. We literally are going to have to get as creative as possible to try to meet the lofty MWB goals that we have for this. And we're going to have to get creative and go into all pockets, Northview Heights, wherever we can go find the people who need some work. Now is the time to go find them and get them lined up. So that's probably at the top of my list. And there's some other things as well. But one thing I think we all need to work on, and I'm curious to get you all's thoughts, and I'm gonna start with Liv, because I think Liv may be closest to this, although DeWitt is also very close to it, unfortunately. I'm afraid, I know Rev shares this concern, and Liv, you mentioned the Black equity and Black health. I believe one of the things we all collectively need to be focused on in 2021 is an active information campaign, an active educational campaign, and an active campaign, however else it comes to light, around COVID-19 and the vaccine. I am very afraid that so many in the city in general, but specifically in Black Pittsburgh, are afraid and not wanting to take this vaccine. And I've had to spend some time getting educated myself, right? So when residents come to me and say, hey, look, this thing was made way too quick. Well, there's a reason for that. One, this isn't the first time we've had COVID. So there was already information out there on it. It's a new strand, but we already have a database worthy of research. Two, what was I was helped come to get educated on was normally in normal sort of vaccine situations, you may be working on something and then you got to go get grants so you can do a little more research. Then you have to go get more dollars so you can take it to the next phase. That wasn't the case in this scenario. In this scenario, government said, don't go looking for any money. Here's the billions necessary, just get it done. And so for that, that's one of the reasons why it was done in a much faster pace, because it was all hands on deck. No one was starting from scratch on this one. But with that said, Liv, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Do you believe we need a campaign centered around the vaccine that educates and informs our residents around it? Do you plan on actually taking a vaccine? I don't think I've ever asked you that question. But what are you also just hearing in general as you attend and as you sort of represent the PBOC in this circle?
So I think I'm a little privileged here. So I don't think I'm the person, like in this case, like the grassroots person. I come from a medical background. I have doctors in my family, as Reverend Burgess will tell you. I believe science, and also I worked in a research lab. I worked for the director of virology, which, if you know what virology is, it's working with viruses and doing research around viruses. So I kind of understand how to, he came in with 15 grants, and that's why he was so attractive to the university in the first place, because grants equals money. But so I worked for this guy, and I learned a lot around virology and virus and how that kind of research works. And like you said, Daniel, this is not the first time that this is a form of COVID is a form of SARS, yeah. and SARS is a very researched and has happened before, so it's not like folks were working from scratch. The other thing around this the vaccine is that this vaccine, right now they don't even have enough information, and this is why it is still going to be necessary for folks to wear masks even after being vaccinated, because the vaccine is proven to lessen the effects of COVID if you should get it, but they don't necessarily have the data to say it avoids you from getting it, period. So so there's a lot of things that, you really have to be in tune with science, medicine and medical doctors, and really kind of listening to what's going on, which everyday people are not doing. One, because they're all otherwise occupied. They have kids, they have families, they have whatever. But two, sometimes the science just gets a little heavy, and it's a lot to kind of digest. So yes, to answer your question, I do believe that we do need a campaign around vaccines, ways to bring it down to people's understanding, and really answer those very those questions around the development and why it was so fast. Like you said, they didn't have to go out for grants. Dolly Parton gave $1 million to this venture. So you had people really throwing money at, like, let's get this vaccine done. We want to get back to normal. So it was not the normal process. So yeah, I think we do really need to educate people. And yes, I do plan to take the vaccine. If I can help in any way doing it publicly, I'll do it publicly. But I absolutely plan to take the vaccine. My aunt's already had the vaccine. I know other people who have already had the vaccine, and they did not grow another nose or a third eye. So I'm pretty trusting of the vaccine. By the time most of us get access to the vaccine, there will have already been thousands upon the thousands of people that have already taken that vaccine. So we should have some more information around the vaccine before it even hits us. So again, I just implore people to really pay attention to what's going on and listen to the science. I mean, even on Channel 4, they're making a doctor available to answer questions. Listen, and really get educated around it. Again, that's everybody's prerogative to get a vaccine or not get a vaccine. But if we want to get back to normal, that's the direction we need to go.
I've not talked as much about it. I have, of course, a couple of members in my church who have COVID and are in the hospital, but my son, my middle son, John, and his girlfriend both caught the virus. I did not talk much about it publicly during their illness because I was just prayerful and hopeful that they would make a complete recovery. They have both recovered from it, but it was, a difficult time for me, and, this not knowing, because you catch the virus, some people have deadly effects, some have light effects. So you just don't know how it's going to affect your loved one. And so he has recovered from COVID now. Him and his girlfriend are both now recovered from it, but it was a scary couple of weeks. I will do everything in my power. One of the things that I'm really worried about, though, is if you when I watch Facebook or talk to members of the church, their families are still doing family gatherings. They're still doing parties. They're still doing birthday parties and get-togethers and Friday night going to clubs. And there's still a vibrant nightlife in the Black community during COVID. They're doing high-risk things. One of the things I'm really worried about is that we're not helping. We're not sheltering in place. We're not wearing masks. I've been to some senior citizen high rises, and they're not half wearing their masks. They're not social distancing. I'm just really worried that the lifestyle of many Black African Americans, especially those in the African American community, they're not really doing things that are preventing the spread of the virus. I think they're helping the virus to spread, and we need to do a much better job of teaching them how to be safe and the importance. They're not just doing it for themselves. You don't wear a mask just for yourself. You wear a mask and you take the shot for everybody that you know and love.
My younger sister, runs clinical trials. We've talked about it. I've had a number of friends who've had loved ones die as a result of COVID. And while I felt deep sorrow, I personally am undergoing a very close tragedy. I'm leaving town tomorrow to go to my home that I grew up in to bring my mother home from the hospital to die from COVID. She turned 97 years old a week ago Monday, and yet she was infected. Someone brought COVID into her home. She had not left her house in a month, and someone brought COVID into her home, and our family is losing that heirloom, that matriarch. So, will I take the damn vaccine? Hell yeah. No ifs and buts about that crap.
Mhm.
And you know, look, I agree with all the things that everyone has shared to this point. But personally, I'm in real pain because of something that's happened that need not have happened. A mask protects you, but just as importantly, or more importantly, it protects someone else. If we care, we'll do whatever we need to do to protect our loved ones and ourselves. We have an ethical, moral obligation to do so. Yes. We have to tell everyone when it becomes available to you, get on board, bruh, sis. You know, all the rhetoric means nothing when you have to visit your loved one for the final time at the gravesite. It's just that real. So
I just want to say I'm so sorry, DeWitt, for what you're going through right now. That is just that's painful. I don't even know how you showed up today. So
And you know we love you, man. You know, big brother, we love you. So let's
what we are doing. I'm sorry to interrupt, Rev. It is not easy. But the work that we're doing, the work that the Pittsburgh Black elected officials are doing, is too important to be left to chance. We may not agree on every issue. And anybody that knows me knows I'll fight like a rabid dog. But the work that we do is too important to leave any stone unturned in our battle for equity and opportunity in our communities. Thank you for inviting me.
Sure, we love you. I think, you know, something you mentioned, I think is true. On last week, we saw an African-American preacher and become elected the first Black senator from the state of Georgia, from the home church of the Ebenezer Baptist Church. And my church and that church are in the same denomination. We're both part of the National Progressive Baptist Convention, a convention started by Dr. King. And a friend of mine, actually, Dr. Toussaint King Hill, who pastored a church in Pittsburgh, left Baptist Temple to become an assistant at Ebenezer. He passed a few months ago, but I'm sure he's somewhere in glory smiling. My friend is smiling over this great accomplishment of that church's pastor. I think it's symbols, and that along with, you know, Biden's primary win in South Carolina, how Black women have turned out for Biden across the country. I think it symbolizes that we have this great opportunity of Black political power, both nationally and here locally. So I guess I want to start with you, Liv, because I think there's no question about what Black women did to elect Biden as president. There's no question about that. But what's your view in terms of now about what do you think the future is for Black political power? You think we're going to have more Black, national representatives? What do you think? More Black females are elected? What's your sense of the future and how we take advantage of this moment?
I think all of that. I think we're going to have a lot of Black women come rise up in the office. I think we're going to have a lot of Black electeds, just period, because that as our demographic changes through the nation, obviously it's going to change how people vote and how people align. So more people are aligning with people of color because they are people of color, so or walk in the margins in some way, shape, or form. So I believe that as folks start rising up, that we're going to see a shift. And I think that's what the tension is right now in America, is you're having this shift from even in the Biden presidency, he's getting a lot of pushback on who he's putting in his cabinet, what he's talking about as far as his platform. Like if he didn't come out and say something about the stark differences between Black Lives Matter response and the riots that happened last week, I think he would have caught heat for that. So I think Black folks particularly, and then expansively, more in general, people of color are rising up and just engaging in a way that hasn't happened before. And I think that they're not going to turn back. I think we're going to continue that engagement. We're going to pull more people in, and you're just going to see a whole different shift. And people are just either going to have to move out the way or they're going to get run over.
Dan, what do you think? What's your view? What's your view of this historic election and where we're at politically?
I tend to agree with Liv that this is indeed historic what we saw. There's no doubt about it. I, however, do fear that we get a little complacent, right? I do fear that we see the winning of the presidency. We see the historical elections in Georgia, and we become a little complacent. I think it's going to be contingent upon all of us, really, to keep the engagement with the local constituency, so they now understand that it's one thing to get us in office. It's a whole nother to now hold us accountable while we're in that seat, and to also empower us where we can actually get things done for you, right? I think too often residents don't fully understand the power dynamic, that it's not simply enough to send us there, right? You now have to, excuse me, you now have to stand with us, come to county council and testify, come to city council public hearings and show up, so that when we're looking to, as me and Rev may look to do in the near future, float a bond to increase our impact on affordable housing, and we have other council members who are worried about it, we're going to need those individuals to show up, because if they don't show up in mass, if they don't show up and actively participate in the process, then it may not happen, because you can't solely leave it to your elected official alone. We're good, but we ain't always that good, right? And so we need public participation. I think it's contingent upon us to engage them and keep them engaged, so that they see the value in the work that they put in to actually get those people elected.
I think Liv and all of us would agree is we have to spend a lot more of our time on voter and constituent education, because their expectations oftentimes are not consistent with the reality of the moment. The truth is, Councilman Lavelle and I, we have led probably one of the most progressive reform movements in the history of our city. Certainly, we have reformed government in Pittsburgh as much as any city in the United States. We have a willing mayor and a willing council. And so we've been able to pass a flurry of activities, right? From, actually moving money from the police force and defunding the police in effect, and stopping new recruits and changing policy and putting money in the avenues of hope. Just historically significant things for Black people. And I think one of the things you started to talk about, and we started off kind of talking about this off camera, how long real change takes to happen. It does not happen overnight, right? If you're really trying to make structural changes in a system that's inherently racist, even with the best of intentions, it moves slowly. And for me, it's been, I'm in my 13th year. Daniel, you're in your 10th year, some 12th year, 11th year. We've been at this, more than a decade. We've had some wins, Larmer and, the Hill District and Skyline, we've had some wins. But at the same time, one of the things I'm learning is people want to see their life better. They want to see the life of their children better. And we need to do all that we can. And I do also want to take this moment, I'm maybe talking more than I usually, is DeWitt Walton has brought resources and real jobs. He has spent his whole life empowering Black people to make living wage jobs. He's put a whole brand new training center into the Ebenezer Baptist Church. He is changing the way Black people receive wealth in this country and in this city. And so I want to commend you for your work. I don't know that the public at large knows how much you've done for this city, not just as your job with the steelworkers, but your job at Randolph Institute and all the training programs that you've been privileged and have been knowledgeable to bring to our city and the lives you've changed. But I do think, I think we're at that moment. I think we can, we are all of the same mind that Black lives matter, Black communities matter, Black wealth matters. And if we work together and put aside individual issues of who gets the credit, who's the smartest, who's the most powerful, who does someone like better, and actually to spend our time partnering and taking the ideas that are on the table, if we just implement those, Black Pittsburgh will be a better place.
If I may, Rev.
Sure.
I want to thank you for your comments regarding me as an individual. But it's not about me. I think all of you have said something that's really critical, that we have to build on. It's about how we educate our constituents, our friends, and our families about from whence we come. Early on, I said that I was the senior member in age of this crew. As a senior in high school was my first real political campaign. When in 1967, I supported Richard Gordon Hatcher to become the first African-American mayor. He and Carl Stokes in Cleveland, November 2nd, 1967, were elected mayors of the first major cities in America, followed by the Tom Bradley in LA. And there were less than 8 individuals at that time. In 1965, when Asa Philip Randolph led the charge to pass the 1965 Voting Rights Act, and how exponentially since that time we have begun the process and built upon the process of transporting Black leadership in this country to elect African Americans across the political spectrum, from mayors to congressmen. Ultimately, in 2008, Barack Obama. In 2020, Kamala Harris. And in 2021, Reverend Warnock. Have we arrived? We're close, but we still have work to do. We still have to educate our friends and families and constituents every day, because again, there are so many competing interests about the fierce urgency of now and the work that's going on collectively to raise per capita income that results in home ownership, that will ultimately result in an improvement in public safety and true community empowerment. Thank you guys for doing what you do. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. And all I can say is let's keep working every day. I trust that we will.
So thank you for that. I know, DeWitt, you need to get moving, but I do want to bring in Micah Campbell-Smith very briefly. She's been monitoring the comments as well as questions that may come in. And so I just want to give her an opportunity to reflect on or provide any of the comments that she thought were important for us to hear and or ask any questions that came in.
Yes. Yvonne brought up working with grassroots organizations in the pandemic and supporting sort of small Black organizations. And I figured that was a great thing to discuss tonight.
Okay. So I can take a stab at it. I think since the very beginning of the pandemic, all of us in various capacities have been partnering with grassroots organizations. I know there were times where DeWitt and his fraternity and Jake through his fraternity and Ramon Hart over at the casino through his fraternity would all get together and they were doing it for a long time actually, providing meals that we would then be able to take out to seniors or to take to homes in need. Most recently, my office, in partnership with the Pittsburgh firefighters, was doing a coat drive for children in need of a winter coat. And there's been other organizations on the ground. There's one on the north side. Pastor, she gonna kill me. Higher Ground over in Perry Hilltop area. That she's again on the ground working with children in need of books, working with children if they need a laptop or anything, just anything of those natures during the Christmas season, making sure that they just had a ham or a turkey to cook. So there have been just a tremendous amount of grassroots organizations that deserve a tremendous amount of work. They don't necessarily, they're not always directed by us, but rather we just help connect them to resources so they can actually do what they do best. So I think we've all been active in our own ways.
Well, in my community, and I know DeWitt has helped, Community Empowerment Association has been on the ground in Homewood, giving out meals and just being a good neighbor. Certainly the church community has all been doing what it can. We have been talking to Giant Eagle and partnering Giant Eagle with the Children's Village to be able to provide groceries in the community so that they won't have to go to a grocery store. All of us have been partnering with a variety, and the neighborhood health centers, Alma Ilry and primary care health centers, although not grassroots organizations technically, are the go-to health resources in our communities. And certainly we've been working with them for both COVID testing, COVID treatment, and I think we will be working with them in the future to do an information and education campaign.
Yeah, we definitely been working with the FQHCs. The PBEOC was really key in creating that partnership between the ACHD, Allegheny Health Department. I hate when people use all these acronyms and don't tell you what they are. And FQHCs, which is federally qualified health centers, which Alma Ilry is one of. So that was definitely a key part of our work I personally work with Take Action Mon Valley, in the Mon Valley, getting resources to folks from Clairton to McKeesport to West Mifflin to, Duquesne, any community that's kind of along that Mon Valley corridor. And then we do partner with other organizations and things as needed when we're doing, collaborative work. So, we've done collaborations. We just did during the holiday, we did a Romero Tally toy drive that was a collaboration between a bunch of organizations such as Take Action and APA and Pittsburgh for Feminist Intersectionality, the Stop the Station. So we do a lot of grassroots work that, just organizing and making sure that folks are really getting cared for in the way that they need to during this time, whether that's food drop-offs or coordinating, transportation for somebody, rent relief. So we've been involved with a lot of that, and a lot of that has been done through grassroots organizations.
For me, it is about doing what you've been called to do. Daniel talked about my fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi, being able to work with Omega Psi Phi and the incredible leadership of Dr. Ramon Hart on food distribution in partnership with a host of churches, including Ebenezer Baptist Church, to address that issue. Having the relationships with Allegheny County Labor Council to provide toys to community-based organizations. And having relationships like we have with individuals who respect the work that we do collectively through the A. Philip Randolph Institute, and just as a human being, to walk up and give you $1,000 and say, take care of a family. To go and buy coats for a family of 8 and shoes, winter shoes for that family. It doesn't get any deeper than that. They want to remain anonymous. Those folks that do that, and it's happened on several occasions this year in 2020. And they said, we want to remain anonymous, and they shall. But again, it is by God's grace that we have the respect to be able to assist individuals in need. And we collectively have to continue to double down on those kinds of things.
Well said, DeWitt. I actually think we should probably end there. And I'll simply say that in order to continue to double down on those things requires collaboration. And I'm very grateful to have you all as colleagues and friends and people that I'm proud to work with. And therefore, I do want to thank County Councilwoman Olivia Bennett, and I want to thank County Councilman DeWitt Walton for being able to spend some time with us this evening and share their thoughts and perspectives. Because in order for us to have significant investment in the Black community, it is imperative that we continue to work together in order to make it safe and peaceful and prosperous for all. And I believe that through our collective work, we are demonstrating our commitment to rebuilding Black communities in Pittsburgh that are for Black people and by Black people, and in collaboration with our partners and allies. And I thank you all for being some of them.
I want to thank all of you for watching and participating in this town hall meeting. Remember, you can watch this show on Facebook, the city's YouTube channel, or the city's cable channel. A new meeting will occur every Wednesday. Next week, we look forward to seeing you again and talking about the issues that are pressing to Black people. By working together, united in purpose, we can transform our city, strengthen it for all of its residents. Pittsburgh can only be a city for all when it becomes a city where Black Pittsburgh matters. Good evening, stay safe, and be blessed.